Hello, Nigel. Hi. So there's a small but vocal crowd of protesters at the other end of the street here in Downing Street, shouting no vaccine passports, it must be said.
Yeah, and I have to say, Darren, I'm not in the least bit surprised by that. And if this national conversation takes us towards mandatory vaccination for all, I suspect those protests will get bigger. Now, am I being too cynical in saying that the Omicron variant has come along at a very convenient time and that the object of launching Plan B is to divert attention away from the Prime Minister's abysmal performance in the House of Commons today?
I think in many regards, and it must be said, Boris Johnson was asked this question, wasn't he, during that press conference, Nigel, in which he said, well, you could look at this the other way around, and if it delayed this press conference because of the news today and that very difficult PMQs for the Prime Minister, then he would have been accused also of neglecting things. I think in the end, no is my answer ultimately to that. And why do I say that? Look at what's happening elsewhere in Europe. At the same time as Boris Johnson was standing up in Downing Street behind me announcing these measures, we're seeing very similar things being announced in Denmark, for example. We know, for example, nightclubs are going to close in France on Friday. These measures are being implemented in most of Western Europe, even Sweden, for example, in the last couple of days, announcing it is going to start introducing restrictions. And why is that? Well, it does seem, unfortunately so, that this new variant is at the very least a hell of a lot more transmissible. And the fear about that is even if it remains relatively mild, and even if actually the number of people who catch it are asymptomatic, that if you get a really highly transmissible variant, you get an awful lot of people catching it all at the one time, and that means the very small percentage of people who do suffer from severe disease, they could well end up all in hospital at the same time. And that is the thought process, at least, from Sir Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty in suggesting that is why they think they need to act now. Is this all very politically tricky, though, Nigel, for the Prime Minister? My word, it is. You should have heard the jeers in the House of Commons tonight when Sajid Javid at the same time was reiterating what the Prime Minister was saying. Lots of Conservative MPs not very happy about this. And you've got this twin problem now for Boris Johnson, where you've got the lockdown sceptic MPs in his own party very angry about vaccine passports, the talk, as you've picked up tonight, about not ruling out mandatory vaccines in this country, which the government has repeatedly done to date, and then the other swathe of MPs who are frankly pretty angry about how Boris Johnson has ended up getting the government yet again in a mess of its own creation. This bumpy ride is far from over.
Right. Now, we're hearing news, Darren, that the Metropolitan Police are not going to investigate what happened in Downing Street on December the 18th because of lack of evidence, which perhaps the Prime Minister will take some cheer from. But you're there, Darren. You're down there in Downing Street. You're with the press pack. You're getting the gossip. This party did happen, didn't it?
I mean, it seems ridiculous to think that it didn't. I mean, you don't even have to be here to know that. I mean, you've got Simon Casey's launched an investigation into what? Well, it must be something, a party that may well have happened. Downing Street today said that he didn't attend that event, as they brand it. So if he didn't attend it, well, then something must have happened for him not to attend it. And then you've also got Allegra Stratton having resigned over something that Downing Street have changed the tune on. I think they're now saying that as far as they're aware, the rules weren't broken, and the assurances that it didn't happen, they've kind of taken at face value to a degree. And this is not just about what happened on the 18th, Nigel, because we know the Prime Minister didn't attend that one. There are a whole lot of other allegations that there were potentially up to 3 other, as the Prime Minister referred to them repeatedly today, not as parties but events, that may well have happened in Downing Street in November and December that were frankly potentially against the rules. Even suggestions that he himself may well have been there. And the Prime Minister is essentially forced to concede tonight that Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary's investigation, may well look at those as well. So those questions remain. Clearly, there's an awful lot of upset out there. There are people really angry about this. People, and Keir Starmer actually very effectively pointed this out today, people who have lost loved ones, unable to see them either in hospital or in care homes over Christmas, who stuck by the rules and who do feel that it is one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us. And that is the political damage, I think, that many Conservative MPs know that the Prime Minister, frankly, has somewhat inflicted on himself. And I say that because, again, it's not necessarily about the party last year, as bad as that is. It's also about what Downing Street have done over the past week, which is not be open and transparent, kicking, screaming to get to this point where they have to admit that something may well have happened and that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, and maybe not told the truth to the House of Commons. We'll see. Darren, thank you.